So Bonnie Blue and Andrew Tate have put a podcast out, and considering that my last video got a reception, to say the least, I figured we'd give this a watch and hopefully come out of the other end having learned something new. Although this is, once again, Bonnie Blue and Andrew Tate, so I know that's wishful thinking. But we can all dream, eh? Before we do that though, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm being serious. I'm about to play a clip right now. There's nothing visually stimulating going on. It's just two idiots talking to each other, so minimize the full screen, tab off whatever game you're playing, subscribe to the channel, then come back to watching the video, or drawing, or playing The Sims, whatever you're doing, man. I hope you're having fun doing it, because we're about to spoil said fun with a conversation between two of the worst people you know.
Andrew, what do you think of Bonnie Blue sleeping with 1,057 men?
How honest should I be out of 10?
11.
I want you to be honest.
You want me to be honest?
Yeah, go on.
I don't understand why men sit here and try and lecture you about it. I don't understand why men sit here and say you shouldn't do it. It's your body, your choice, right? This is the world we now live in. This is the end result of feminism.
A lot of people use this argument when it comes to, like, I guess, chastising people for doing something involving their body. Your body, your choice, my body, my choice is, you know, true to a certain extent, but to a certain extent there is really important. If I went outside and punched someone in the face for no reason, I can't then use the excuse, well, it's my fist, that's part of my body, I chose to punch said man in the face, I can do what I want because it's my body, my choice. Everyone knows as well, it's a complete bastardization of what the phrase actually means. It obviously does not apply to all facets of life in, you know, equal value, if that makes sense. And before we move on, just the very fact that these two are collaborating at all, I know she hasn't explicitly endorsed Andrew Tate yet, at least, but like, in order to do this collaboration or podcast with him, that it counts as an endorsement, right? Especially because if you believed everything about Andrew Tate that has been, I say alleged in heavy quotations, a lot of it has been he's admitted to a lot of that bollocks. If you truly believed all those allegations were a lie, then you wouldn't be sat here talking to him civilly, would you? In order for you to sit there and endorse and promote him, and also to believe everything that's happened, you'd have to be even more of a scumbag than we previously all thought.
You know, women complain that men don't want to get married. We did actually want to get married when we got obedient virgins, but they disappeared, and they complained about the patriarchy, and they were tired of us giving them a house to live in and kids to raise, and they wanted to make their own choices. So she's making her own choice. That's a fantastic thing. I actually have a lot of respect for you because you own it and you're honest about it.
What if it was your daughter?
Well, that won't happen.
Okay, so this is also something that I've heard many, ignore the fucking whole rant that Andrew Tate has just gone on there. I genuinely can't tell how much of it he actually believes and how much of it is rage bait, or how much of it is just sort of, I guess, pandering to his very, I say specific niche, or it's not even a niche audience. There are an alarming amount of people who look up to this bloke for some reason. I'll put it this way, I don't think anybody who's a fan of this channel will agree with any of the rhetoric that he's just spouted there, so we don't need to go into that. But in terms of the what if this was your daughter argument, this is something that I had levied against me by many people in my last video about Bonnie Blue just a few days back. You know what, I'll read some of the comments verbatim actually so I don't misrepresent them. Sex work isn't work, it's demeaning for women. Contributes to men seeing us as less than humans and merely pleasure objects for them. I don't think the majority of the comments so far is a necessarily controversial or immoral opinion to hold. Like, it's fine to think that. I personally agree that consuming pornography, especially in copious amounts, is very damaging and not healthy at all. I'm also absolutely willing to, I guess, forfeit the fact that pornography may be a reason as to why certain men see women as objects or less human, right? I don't know to what extent. I'd have to do some research, and even then it'd be very difficult to pinpoint exactly what percentage pornography is responsible for modern objectification of women. But even if all of that is true and it really does contribute to all of those negative aspects of society that you are claiming it does, that does not mean that it's not work. Just because you believe that sex work as a whole is a net negative for society, that does not take away the fact that sex work is still work. This woman, OF, and other sex workers who literally weren't forced into sex work are contributing to the sexual violence against women. I just don't know if that's true. I would love to see some studies or some real evidence to actually back that up. I also take issue with the addition of the weren't forced into sex work bit because it isn't really relevant. Because that addition sort of implies that if they are forced into sex work, then it doesn't contribute to violence against women. Surely the motivation behind a sex worker's decision to be a part of the industry doesn't change said effect of said industry. And all of you disagreeing or wanting to argue, as I'm sure there'll be some weirdos, hope your daughter gets into sex work then. Bit of a strange thing to wish upon somebody when you just said that sex work is contributing to the downfall of society and women as a whole, to then hope that people have daughters who get into said destructive industry. It'd be one thing if you just asked the question, like, how would you react if your daughter became a sex worker, as opposed to just saying, I really hope your daughter becomes a sex worker. Like, why would you hope that happens if it's so demeaning for women? What, you want women to be demeaned more? So don't get pissy that I'm wishing for it to come close to home, and if you're getting mad and defensive imagining your daughter in that line of work, then you don't actually support sex work. I think if they phrase this comment in a clearer, sort of easier to understand way, it could be legitimate sort of arguments against the industry, right? Or people who support it like I do. They phrased it like a bit of a prick, but I understand what they're trying to say here, and I'll respond accordingly, right? It's like that podcast just said, like, what if your daughter was doing what Bonnie Blue did? What if your daughter was a sex worker, right? Which I understand is a good question, right? Because for people who support it without actually thinking too deep about it, a mind-shattering moment that makes or breaks their decision on whether or not they think it's moral. And to be completely, like, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that I would be really happy or really hope that my daughter gets into an industry like sex work. I don't want that. But that's not because I don't have respect for sex workers or don't support the industry. It's because I know how dangerous the industry is. Not from experience, but it's a dangerous industry. The main reason why it's so dangerous is because sex workers aren't given the same rights and labor laws that other industries are given. If you're a sex worker, you're way more likely to be physically assaulted. You can contract various diseases or infections, and there's no one to complain to legally because, once again, there's no rights for them. I'd react the same way if I had a son who wanted to get into sex work as well. Or even just, I don't know, a martial art or something. Like, if I had a son who wanted to become a boxer, I wouldn't want that either. But that's not because I don't respect boxers. It's because boxing is really dangerous. You know, I wouldn't want my son getting pinged in the head every single day of their life. But again, when you say sex work, there's so many, like, different, I guess, facets of sex work that need to be considered. Because when you say sex work, do you mean, like, what? Do you mean prostitution? Do you mean OnlyFans? Do you mean pornography? Do you mean escort work? What exactly do you mean? Because each of those possibilities carry different risks alongside them. And at the end of the day, if I had a daughter who was old enough to participate in sex work, it's not really my choice at that point. All I can really do is make sure they're as educated as possible when it comes to all of the risks that are involved in said industry. And at the end of the day, if they chose to participate in said industry, yeah, I'll be honest, I wouldn't be thrilled about it. But if you were put in a situation like that and you chose to stop loving your daughter or disown them or anything of the like, then I don't think you're nearly as moral as you think you are. You don't need to love your child's line of work to accept it. People love to use this point as like a gotcha moment. Like, oh, if your daughter was a sex worker, you would do X and Y. It's like, my daughter was a sex worker. Yeah, I'll be real. I wouldn't be thrilled about it. But that does not take away from any of the points that I'm making. Because the reasoning behind my disapproval doesn't come from any, I guess, ownership that I feel as though I have over my daughter. It's mostly about worry and concern. Now, look, that being said, I haven't really planned responses to these comments or the podcast. I've not seen the podcast before this video, so I'm sort of spitballing, thinking out loud here. I'm sure I'm going to say some things that might not make sense or you disagree with, so feel free to tell me in the comments. And at the end of the day, I don't really know how I would completely react with 100% certainty because it's not happened to me yet. So I don't have any children. Like, I do know people who are sex workers who have great relationships with their family. I just want to be clear that this is not a channel. We are not here to demean sex workers. Like, that's just not what this channel is about. If you disagree with that, I'm sure you have your reasons, but I hope you can respect my reasons to disagree with you. At the end of the day, the sex work industry is not going anywhere. It will never be completely abolished. Like, there's just no way to make that happen. So I think the best thing to do is to make it as safe as possible for everyone.
I never said my daughter's her own person. I said women want to be their own people. But my point is, there's so many women who go to Magaluf for a weekend and do something very similar, and then they come back to England and get with some guy and start asking for presents from him and talking about how they deserve a traditional relationship and they want to get married and they want a Christmas present and all this bullshit. Most women do exactly what Bonnie does. I don't see you any different than most women.
Most women do exactly what Bonnie. Is that right? Do most women shag 1,057 men in one day? Do most women in their mid-20s exclusively try and shag barely legal teens? Is that what most women do, is it? Do most women arrange fucking meetings where they're in a glass box where people can do whatever the fuck they want to them? It's just a completely nothing point from one of the silliest people online. The fact that anybody thinks that Andrew Tate has any sort of intelligence is genuinely baffling. He's one of the dumbest fuckers on the internet, man. It's insane. It's just occurred to me now, it's this like a 2-hour-long podcast. I'm gonna put it on 1.5 times speed. I hope you don't mind.
7 men in a day.
1,000? Does it fucking matter?
I think it does.
I don't really think it does.
So
It's all disgusting to me. If I met a woman and she said, I just sucked a dick yesterday, I'd say, well, I find you repulsive. I don't want to sleep.
What kind of conversations does this bloke think happen in the real world? I don't think that interaction has ever happened, like, in the history of the fucking universe. No, you go up to a girl, and before you even say your name to them, they go, oh, hello, mate. Look, by the way, I sucked a dick yesterday. I wanted to let you know that. But then however will they live with Andrew Tate finding them repulsive and not wanting to sleep with them? I mean, at that point, your life's pretty much fucking worthless, isn't it? I mean, I know me personally. My life is only worth living if Andrew Tate wants to sleep with me. But unfortunately, he doesn't, because I sucked a dick yesterday.
When you the kind of white people say, I don't know what's wrong with you people. Everyone has a past. That's not acceptable. In fact, let's analyze that. You're right. Everyone does have a past. It's true. But isn't the primary objective of a man to find a woman with as little past as possible?
I've never understood that mentality, by the way. And here come the comment, virtue signaling, pandering, danky, for people who don't enjoy this show. I know what the fucking comment's like for people who don't enjoy the channel. I genuinely have never understood that mentality of, like, a girl needs to have X amount of bodies before they're able to sleep with me. 1 or 2, maybe acceptable, but if it's any more than 5, never! I'm not going near you with a 10-foot barge pole! It's like everyone has fucking pasts, man. It just don't matter. Like, it genuinely doesn't matter. If you like a girl, and if you really like a girl, like if you actually like a girl, or a person, anyone in general, it's their past that has made them the person that they are today. The person that you enjoy the company of or like would not exist if they hadn't gone through all of those previous experiences, such as the people that they have slept with previously. In my opinion, if a woman's body count is the main thing that keeps you away from them, they've probably dodged a bullet. Because you don't want to be with someone who cares that much about your past, the people that you slept with, your body count. You don't want to be with someone like that because they're just losers, most of them. They're not people who you want to spend the rest of your life with. I'll put it that way.
The reason I'm proud of Bonnie, and I am genuinely proud of you, I like Bonnie. I like what you do. Because the deal was...
You're not, like, contradicting yourself here.
In what way?
Well, you're proud of her sleeping with 1,057 guys, but women should be virgins.
No, I'm saying that the social contract, the construct of society that made family function, was women were obedient virgins, and they found a man who provided for them, and they listened to that man. Women have then said, we don't like the patriarchy, we're tired of being provided for, we're tired of being taken care of, we don't want to listen to anybody, we want to make our own decisions. That was women and feminism that ended the traditional family unit. And now women can make their own decisions. So I'm glad that Bonnie's making her own decision.
Yeah, but people say, I take women back 100 years. I'm like, no, I'm the clear example of how to be empowered. I use my body, I do what I want, when I want. And this is the thing you've been banging on about for years. And when I get hate, like when I click on the comments of these women that are like, oh, you're taking us back 100 years, then in their bio it's a stay-at-home mom of 2. I'm thinking, what was you rooting for?
That's
because
right.
you have just stayed
That's
at
right,
home.
Bonnie. See, this is the future.
Yeah.
This is the future. This is fantastic. It's exactly what Western society is headed to. So why are we going to sit here and pretend this is not? Why are we going to sit here and pretend that most women who go on girls' holidays aren't doing something similar to what Bonnie does, just because it's not on camera? Why are we going to sit here and pretend that these men who walk around with their wives in the pub in England, they're like, oh, my wife, yeah, everyone has a past. Oh, no, she's done the same shit. What's the difference?
This is yet another point that I personally have never understood, because the past that these, I guess, red pillars, a lot of them are claiming to want so badly to come back, that has been completely ruined by modern feminism. It's like, no, you know, that version of history still exists on the planet today, just not in these developed Western countries that a lot of us live in. But if you go to certain places in the Middle East or Africa, for example, yeah, a lot of them are still sort of stuck in the past. If you can genuinely look at those societies, observe their treatment of women and go, yeah, we need to go back to that time. We need to employ their rules and bring them to our Western societies right now. Then I honestly don't know what to tell you. You're either lying or genuinely despicable.
I think that when a woman becomes a mother, she has a purpose, and I think that women should be having children as soon as possible, and I think it gives their life a direction, and I think it's the most important thing to preserve society, especially if you want to talk about geopolitics and talk about race and all of these things. If you want to have a country that looks like the country it used to be, you need to have the original people from there having children. I think all of that is true, absolutely. I think every day a woman goes without having kids is primarily a waste of time.
When can women start having children? Like when puberty ends, right? 15? You think women should have babies at 15 years old, Andrew? The average age is actually 12. I went with like the upper limit. I just went with the upper limit because I guess subconsciously I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, which I shouldn't have done. He doesn't deserve that. But yeah, he's saying realistically, what he's saying is that 12-year-old girls should be getting pregnant. That is what he's saying here. Is this what a lot of people, is this what his supporters think as well? I know there is like a large subgenre of men who support him, and as well as like many other, I guess, red pillars or anyone in that side of the internet that do believe getting with a woman and having children as young as possible is like the ideal way to go. But that's never read as anything to me other than genuinely predatory. Even if they're legal, even if they're over the age of consent, it's like, okay, but why are you as a 35-year-old man only trying to date people who are under the age of, say, 20 22. We can all agree that as you get older, as you progress into your 20s, you begin to realize what you like, what you don't like, right? You grow as a human being. The only reason why you would want to date someone that much younger than you is because they're that much less experienced than you. They haven't gone through that growth period yet, where they've learned what they want, what they don't want, and how to handle dickheads. It's just this completely toxic mindset that preys upon the naivety and inexperience of young women, usually in an attempt to lock them into something by having children. And a lot of that is because those people know for certain that women their own age, they're shit scared of them. Like, they know that women their own age they wouldn't fucking touch them with a 10-foot barge pole. Because they're able to see through their shit, their facade of niceness for the first couple months that they put up when they interact with the younger women that they're going for constantly. It's just why men as a whole, they're under so much less pressure to grow up, if that makes sense. You're a lot more likely to see a 40-year-old man acting like a fucking child than a 40-year-old woman acting like a fucking child. Because women are just under so much more pressure from everyone to grow up quicker.
I used to be a full-service sex worker, like an escort, and I used to judge men that cheated. And then when I actually started speaking to these men, I was like, you know what, they've got a point. They're going to work, they're looking after their kids, they're still emptying the dishes because the wife's now refusing to do that, saying it should be equal. And then I say, well, when's the last time she gave you a blowjob? When's the last time they couldn't name it? They couldn't even list the amount of times where they've had sexual intercourse. I'm like, of course you're going to need that. Of course you're going to cheat. So how can I ever say women are anything but lazy and poorly educated?
So do you think you're a good role model for women?
I'm a clear example of what women have fought for years.
So Bonnie was an actual escort before she started doing like this whole gig that she's on right now. That is interesting. I didn't know that, to be fair. I had no idea about that sort of past. And that's one thing that a lot of people brought up in the comments on my last video that I neglected to bring up because I just didn't feel as though it was important enough to include in the video. But it's Bonnie's history of encouraging men to cheat on their wives. Once again, like a lot of the shit she does, I genuinely believe that it's just sort of rage bait. But just to tackle that sort of topic, that scenario that she brought up just a second ago about a man coming home from work after working really hard, taking care of the kids, washing the dishes because the wife wants it to be equal or whatever. We don't live in a world anymore where the bloke goes to work, makes all the money, comes home, and then is greeted with everything having been done, because the economy just doesn't work that way anymore. In today's economy, most households are two-income households. The mother and the father both need to be working together to provide for the home. So yes, if both parents are working, both parents also need to be handling the work at home. It would be extremely unfair if the mother had a job, the father had a job, and then the mother handled all the housework, which is essentially a job within itself. Being a mother in a house full of children, especially if there's multiple children, is a full-time job. Depending on the job, it sometimes requires more effort than having an actual full-time job. But once again, like any relationship, it all just comes down to communication. Let's say you're one of the rare few lucky cases where one bloke is able to make enough money to support the whole family, and part of that deal is that the wife or mother does most of the housework. Perfectly fine thing to happen in your life. If that's the way it is, that's totally fine. But as long as you both you're on the same page about it, then it's ideal, really. If you came home one day and you realize that not as much of the housework is being done as you would like, and you feel as though your part of the deal or the work that you're doing outshines or outweighs what your wife is doing, your first instinct or first choice in that scenario shouldn't be, all right, well, I'm going to Bonnie Blue, I'm going to shag a girl, I'm hiring an escort, it's just too much for me. If you're a married couple, it's like communication's the first thing that should be on anyone's mind when it comes to handling any problem. Not in just relationships, but friendships, acquaintances, work colleagues. It's like the first option and the best option as well. Instead of hiring an escort, you should maybe talk civilly to your fucking wife and go, I feel as though the work balance here isn't exactly fair, and come to some sort of compromise. And if you're in a healthy relationship, it won't be long before you come up with some sort of compromise.
If a man walks into Starbucks and steals a chocolate bar, he's a thief, correct?
Not in London.
Well,
it's legal.
Yeah. And if a banker manages to liquidate a ton of stock illegally in the stock market or rip off a bunch of people with a false investment fund, whatever it is, he's a thief, right? The morality is the same, whether you're stealing from the Wall Street or you're stealing from Starbucks. The morality of it is the same. But people will sit there and argue that the banker is somehow worse than the guy who stole the chocolate bar because of how much he stole. I wouldn't argue there's a difference in morality. There's a difference in capability, but the morality is the same. The banker's just smarter.
I'm just a clever...
You're just very good. She is very good at what she's decided to do. If you're going to be a... And most women watching this, and most men, hello, your wife, yeah, her, they're all anyway. If you're going to be a... No disrespect. You may as well be good at it. Get a media empire, get rich, let everyone know your name, and get paid.
So that is a metaphor that I mean, I don't need to tell you, is a load of complete bollocks, right? I guess it makes sense to a certain extent where it's like, if the kid who is stealing the Twix is only stealing the Twix because that is the extent of his capability, and if he was able to take the millions, then he would, maybe you could make a case as to both the banker and the kid being similar in terms of morals. But that's to imply that the only reason women are having sex with one individual is because they don't have the capability to do what Bonnie Blue's doing, despite them really wanting to. Which I'm sure I don't need to tell you is not the intentions of the majority of women. You can't just call all women sex workers because they engage in intercourse for and then receive something later on. Like, if you give your girlfriend or your wife flowers, that doesn't make them a sex... you can't extrapolate that to the extent of like, oh, you're having sex with me for these flowers that I am giving you. Therefore, that makes you a sex worker and you're just as bad as Bonnie Blue. Because by that logic, if you're a bloke who's having sex with a woman and then they give you something, which in a healthy relationship, you will receive something at some point from the girl that you're dating, whether that be, I don't know, them taking care of your children, for example, in your ideal world, does that make you a sex worker as well? It's just completely flawed logic. It makes no sense at all.
I mean, I guess I contradict myself a little bit because I help society out a lot. And I do that because do you see how many dicks I drain? How many balls I've been emptied out on my face? How many pies I've taken and scooped it out? Like,
And how does that help society?
sex workers help, like, reduce rates by over 30%.
Did that sound like a stat you just made up?
No, Google it.
Yeah, that's probably true. Mental health, it's good for mental health as well. Stops
truth
men
fact, it's
killing themselves.
32%.
Yeah, stops men killing themselves. Sex work is an important part of the world.
All right, let's look that up, because I've never heard that stat before. Liberalizing prostitution leads to a significant decrease in rape rates, while prohibiting it leads to a significant increase. The results are stronger when rape is less severely underreported and when it is more difficult for men to obtain sex via marriage or partnership. Okay, so it does look as though there is potentially some sort of semblance of validity to the statement that Bonnie is making there. Not in terms of her personally improving the world or whatever, but in terms of sex work being a something that could potentially reduce rape rates, which does contradict what a lot of people say about sex work only adding to misogyny and adding to the objectification of women as a whole, like being a net negative. But obviously, I'm not jumping to conclusions. That is just one study, and it's something that I would like to read up on. I'll buy a couple books and actually like study the whole topic myself in my own time and figure out exactly what's going on there, or at least to the best extent that I can, because I'm sure it's a lot more complicated than just one fucking study. I'd also imagine it's a very difficult metric to measure as well. I mean, I'm under no illusions that there are negatives to the industry, just like every industry has its positives and has its negatives. I suppose I'm just not educated enough on the matter to make any definitive claims, so I won't. I'm not gonna act as though I read the synopsis of one study and all of a sudden I'm an expert on sex work and its effect on society. But I do mean it when I say that it is a topic that I will be researching a lot, because it is something that I do find genuinely quite interesting, and the discussion around it is, I feel, one that has a lot of issues.
Honest about their sex work, because all women out here are sex working anyway. When's the last you've been in Dubai recently?
Yeah.
Find a woman who ain't sex working. That is a challenge, sir. $1 million to find a woman who ain't living off a man, because that is sex work. You giving sex and she's giving you money. That's the game. I tweeted
It's actually
this.
so true. I've never thought of it like that.
I tweeted
When
this.
people are boyfriend and girlfriends,
It's
the
sex
majority of the
work.
time, they do a low-paid job, not got the education to do anything better. So, and they're having sex with the partners, keep them interested. The partner's paying the bills. It's a sex work with one client. just like you said.
100%.
Maybe that's because you're going for women who are fucking 20 or 19 years old. Obviously, they're not gonna have a high-paying job or a lot of experience or knowledge about the world when they're fucking teenagers. Maybe if you went for women your own age, you wouldn't have that bastard issue. But you would never do such a thing, because women your own age you're afraid of. It's like that one guy, you know when you're in school and there's that one fucking boy who goes for people in the year below him, and if it's like, okay, if you go for someone in the year below you and you're in a relationship with them, it's like, okay, fine, whatever. It's just happened once. It might just be a coincidence. You might have not gone for this. But then when it becomes a trend and you realize, what? You are only going for people in the year below us. It's like, okay, now it's fucking weird. Like, what's going on here, bro? What the fuck is happening? Shit is dodgy, man. There are a couple people like that in my school, and they were all fucking weirdos. What did she even say? Let me remind myself what she said, because there was some other dumb shit about it.
It's actually so true. I've never thought of it like that.
I tweeted
When
this.
people are boyfriend and girlfriends, the
It's
majority
sex
of the time, they do a low-paid job, not got the education to do anything better. So, and they're having sex with the partners, keep them interested. The partner's paying the bills. It's a sex work with one client.
But by that logic, there is no situation where a woman isn't a sex worker unless they stay a virgin their entire life. Because according to these two twats, if you have intercourse with someone and then are provided anything by them at any point in your life after the fact, you become a sex worker. I love that she sat there like, oh my god, that's actually true. I never thought about it like that. Like it's some fucking profound Rene Descartes level statement. All men in the world with children, you are now sex workers because you shagged a woman and they gave you a child, right? You have been given a child because you shagged someone. So therefore, you are a sex worker and you are just as bad as Bonnie Blue.
But if you're pretty enough, you don't do that. You find a boyfriend or a husband or a sugar daddy, whatever you want to call him, and he's paying your bills. Go to Saint-Tropez, Monaco, Cannes, go to Miami, go to Dubai, go to Hong Kong, go to any of these cities and find a beautiful woman and ask her job. She either doesn't work because her boyfriend takes care of her, or she has some bullshit vanity project which loses money that her husband pays for. Owns a flower shop that loses money each month. Businesswoman, independent. Bullshit. Women have only ever been sex workers. Women have only ever translated their to money or to provision or into protection. That's all women have ever done.
I really do wonder how much of this he genuinely believes because it sounds so nonsensical. And I really can't tell if he just knows his audience will buy into this shit. Like Andrew Tate has reached a point in his career, if you want to call it that, where he can just say whatever the fuck he wants and maintain the audience that he has. I feel like by this point, the people who like Andrew Tate like him and the people who don't. It's very difficult to change any of those people's minds. If you're someone who still fucking loves fanboys over this bloke after everything that's been revealed about him and everything that he said and admitted to, then I feel like there's nothing that could possibly change your mind. Unless he maybe started advocating going for girls, you know, your own fucking age. That'd probably scare you off, actually.
Do your best to find a woman, if you want to take her seriously, with as little history as possible, if that's the kind of thing that bothers you.
Does it bother you?
Well, it depends.
I mean, surely your best place to go then is high school.
No, I mean, Bonnie's absolutely right. I can't believe I'm saying this, but she's absolutely fucking right. If you want to find women with as little experience as possible, you go to a fucking high school. Do you realize why that mindset is so predatory and disrespectful? And again, I don't know if he genuinely believes what he's saying or he's just spouting this bollocks. He definitely believes it to an extent, but to this level, it's like, what's he gonna say? I mean, I'm curious what his response is to that. I feel like he's just gonna dodge it completely.
It depends because there's different categories of women, right? Everything in life is actually fine if you keep everything in the right place. If you use a fork for forking and a spoon for spooning, everything's fine. It only gets confusing when you try and mix the two up. All men love horse. Men love horse.
We've got good technique.
Of course. Any man who sits there and
So
says
you love horse then?
Well, any man who says he doesn't love horse is a liar.
So you love.
Well, if I'm on a boat in Miami, I don't want
Would you
nuns.
prefer a blowjob with your teeth or the mouth? You need someone with experience.
Well, if you want girls who are just a good time, they're not going to be that emotionally invested. They're probably going to be. If you're going to go to a party with 20 women, you want women who are just a good time. Good time women are hoes and men love. But men want the dichotomy because we want our cake and eat it. We want a wife and we want both. It only gets confusing for a man when he puts her in the wrong category. What happens is a man will fall in love with her because he can't control himself and then try and say, oh no, she's wifey because he loves her because he's an idiot. But if you're me and you can sit and go, okay, that one's a good one. She's wifey. Those are the hoes. They're this. And you just keep everything in its right place. It's fine.
Or maybe, just maybe, sex isn't that important. If you get into a monogamous relationship with somebody and are consistently having intercourse with them for 6 months or so, I feel as though the experience you get from that at that point will be better than like 99% of whatever else is out there that you haven't met before or done it with before, because you know each other by that point. You know each other's likes and dislikes. It's not a fucking pick and mix where you're like, okay, I'll use this woman to wash the dishes, I'll use this one to suck me off, I'll use this one for PIV, I'll use this one for CNC. Or with Andrew Tate specifically, he probably just cuts out the first C and goes for NC. I just fucking hate it. Like, it makes my fucking blood boil, this like mentality, the fact that people actually buy into this. It's difficult. It's quite like challenging to actually remember that there are people out there who think like this, because I am surrounded by people who don't believe this sort of thing. Like, there is nobody in my circle of friends or their circle of friends that actually buys into any of this shit. So I very rarely come across people like this in the wild, if that makes sense. So it's almost difficult to believe they exist, if that makes sense. But the abundance of their existence on the internet, or just somebody who you meet for the first time that happens to have a belief that lines up with this, is a grim reminder that these people do exist. And there's way more of them than you could ever fucking... Honestly, just having one of them is too much.
Well, just like how Andrew likes 18-year-olds.
Wait, careful. Careful now.
Sorry, should I go
I'm
younger?
under investigation. What I have said...
Andrew, 18 is a legal age. I don't know what you class as legal.
No,
but
18 is legal. You're right.
Yeah.
But the reason, actually, and it's interesting you said this, the reason men prefer younger women is because they have less history. The
Yeah.
average 22-year-olds live less life than the average 30. That's why men prefer younger in general. But I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just clarifying.
That's not why men prefer younger women. That's why creeps prefer younger women. That's why people like you prefer younger women. It's not why men, as a whole, don't fucking group us in. But here's the thing. Here's the fucking thing. These people and the people who believe this shit will look at me, say, don't group me or, you know, the whole category of men that don't believe this shit into that group, and they will go, oh my goodness, I cannot believe this virtue signaling, pandering piece of piss who is pretending he doesn't think the same way that we do. Because in their mind, someone who doesn't believe what they believe, someone who doesn't go for women with far less life experience than them, is this incomprehensible fictional character that can never exist in any realm of reality. That's how fucked up a lot of their bastard minds are, man. They can't even conceive a world where a man wants to date someone their own fucking age. You know what, now's a good time to bring up another comment that I got. Danky again with the woman pandering takes. Never wants to acknowledge reality because he knows his mostly female audience would hate the truth. What a pathetic and sack of a man. Brush your hair too, you dirty bastard. First of all, I can't brush my hair. The curls are too tight. It would hurt like a bitch. Unless it was wet. Like, if my hair was really wet, then I could brush it then. So I appreciate the advice, Grand Wizard, but I think I know what to do with my hair. But this is what I mean, like, and this is why it does annoy me a little bit when I and many other commentary YouTubers are called virtue signaling or pandering to their female audience or whatever the fuck. It's like, no, we're allowed to think this way. Just because you disagree with us, that does not make us liars. It just means that we disagree. I don't think you're lying about your preference for younger, inexperienced women. I don't think you're lying about that. But that's exactly the fucking problem, is that I do genuinely believe you're being truthful. The fact that you can't even conceive of a man that doesn't think that way, unfortunately, says far more about you than it does about me. He left another comment as well, which was hilarious. Sex workers are vile people. He put people in quotation marks there as if they're subhuman or like aliens or gargoyles. And you pretending you can be a sex worker and morally upright is hilarious. Dirty, disgusting, dingy beings are a stain on our society. OnlyFans should be banned. You know, I do get quite sick of people just saying things and making claims like this, calling a certain genre of people disgusting or vile, and not actually explaining why they believe said thing in any meaningful way, at least. Like, a lot of people will say things like, oh, this group of people are horrible because they contribute to this aspect of society being worse. It's one thing to say that, it's another thing to actually show evidence or proof of that. So I wouldn't expect anything less from this commenter in particular, because I did respond to this comment with this, which I think says it all, to be honest. For those who aren't actually watching the video and are just sort of listening to it, the guy's profile picture is the same profile picture as that one guy who encouraged his fans to send and spread CP to each other on like Discord and that from a couple years back. His name was Maximilian Musk. And I ended it with, I don't think you're in any position to lecture me on morality. Okay, one last thing about this fucking vlog before we move on that I find really funny. So YouTube does this thing where when you click on the profile, it shows you like how many comments they've made, a bit of their history on the channel or whatever. And this guy he's commented on my channel 16 times, like on a bunch of previous videos. If he fucking hates me this much, I don't understand why he keeps watching me. Look, he liked me at some point. I thought you were like 25. I definitely like you a lot more that I know we're the same age. Maybe it was his birthday since then and we're no longer the same age and all of a sudden he disagrees with everything that I've ever said. Did I seem like somebody previous to my last video that aligns with these sort of viewpoints? Because if so, I don't understand why Craig Middleton was ever a fan of us. To be honest with you, the fact that he was ever a fan of the channel makes me worried about the type of content that I'm producing and how I come across. But whatever, we're done with the Grand Rizzler or whatever his fucking name is. We'll move on to the rest of the podcast now.
And they basically say you have sex or you're probably going to die from an STD. There's no information. If anything, they should whip up one of my DVDs, put it on screen and show, look, that's how the enters the pussy. This is how you get a girl wet. There's none of that. So me having sex with them shows this is a woman's body. Yes, a woman's, Andrew, not trans. And
I don't think you're trans.
And
we'll come to that.
They don't know how to pleasure a girl. They've not touched a girl. They've just watched videos, you know, online.
Yeah, see, this all here, there's no way that she actually, like, believes this. This is all rage bait. Like, it's just there's no conceivable way where she genuinely believes that shagging 18-year-old boys is like a net positive for them or society as a whole, and that in sex ed class they should play videos of her shagging 1,000 men. There's just no chance in hell. I'm not buying it. I'm not biting. I'm not falling for this rage bait.
They've just watched videos, you know, online where they slapping, these choking, these hair pulling. and then they go to do it on a woman or a girl for the first time, she's probably going to cry for the next day.
Yeah, you're probably going to get a criminal charge of that. Probably get sued if that happens.
Yeah, as they should. Like, if you're doing stuff like that without their consent or without having spoken about it before, if you just start fucking choking a woman or pulling their hair really hard or being that sort of physical person without having discussed it with them beforehand, then yeah, that's dodgy and they have the right to complain about it. Especially if they ask you to stop in the moment and you fucking don't. It's like you cannot complain at that point that they've not done what you wanted. Also, Bonnie, if you want sex ed teachers to show videos of you on the screen as a form of sex education, how would that prevent stuff like that from happening? If a boy's only fucking conception of shagging is from Bonnie Blue videos, fuck me, the world would be a horrible place.
And also, I give them such a safe environment. Like, I mean, if you had an 18-year-old son, would you send him to me on his 18th birthday?
No.
I don't know why he thought about that for any. This guy's a fucking coward. I don't know what this Rob Moore guy's about or what he does. I know fuck all about him. But he's just sort of sat there sucking these two off and giving like the lamest interjections that he possibly could. It even got to the point where he didn't just immediately say no to that stupid question.
Everybody's out for themselves. Everything is transactional. And the goal of all transactions is to get the better end of the deal. And I have no problem with girls spending my money if I feel like I'm getting the better end of the deal.
Yeah.
If she gives me like children, for example, that's one of the ways she can give me the better end of the deal. If she dedicates her life to me and she's sexually exclusive to me and she doesn't go out clubbing or partying and doesn't do anything without telling me and she gives me her life and her loyalty, I feel like that's worth some money. That's a transaction, but it is a transaction. It's absolutely what it is. I'm not interested in having sex with women just for the sake of sex. I really, this might be controversial, don't find sex
Fuck, a bit controversial.
I know. I don't find sex that entertaining. I really don't enjoy it that much.
Maybe you need to put the
Sex
girls
is
up.
supposed to be entertaining.
No, I really, like,
Okay, but here's the thing with that. It's like, okay, so if you're not having sex purely for the purpose of having sex and you're having sex for ulterior motives, by your own logic, that makes you a sex worker. That puts you on the same level as Bonnie Blue. I'm sure you wouldn't say that though, because the train of thought or the logic that takes you to that point is completely flawed and makes no sense whatsoever.
there's nothing more toxic and more destructive to the female mind than social media in general, not because of what Bonnie's do. I would argue not because of what. I would argue if you look at a woman on TikTok and watch them. Next time you see a girl on TikTok, I've seen them do it. They scroll past a guy giving her a Birkin, then a girl on a private jet with some guy with roses, then a G-Wagon full of roses, then a boat in Dubai. And women are sitting there with their boyfriends, their normal boyfriend with a normal job, going, why are these bitches getting all of this and I'm not getting it? That woman's not even that pretty. I'm as pretty as her. I want all of this. And before you know it, she starts DMing me trying to get it. That's what happens. So the world's completely because social media is giving this grass is always greener garbage. And then the women who are with me are crying because they can't find a man who sits at home with them every night and watches Netflix. And the women who have a man who sits at home with them every night watching Netflix is crying because they can't find a man like me to pay for a private jet. And everyone's miserable and everyone's unhappy. And everyone's just chasing all over the place and nobody has any grounding anymore. And the grounding used to be from ignorance. You meet someone, you knew them, you only knew them, you didn't know the outside world.
It's just not how normal people work, like, at all. Maybe in his world, where he's surrounded by, like, these very specific types of people, he's sort of clouded or tricked himself into thinking that this is how everyone works. And I understand to an extent that divorce rates have gone up as time has gone on. I do think that a large portion or a large reason for such a thing happening is because of the variety of options that are out there nowadays. Things like online dating, things like Instagram, things like social media that allow you to see so much more people, just in general. Whereas before things like online dating and social media, it was very difficult to meet people like that. Like, you couldn't exactly, if you're with someone, have a look just in your day-to-day life, come across many people who you may perceive to be a better partner than the one who you are currently with, which I'm sure nowadays happens a lot more because of just how much stuff there is. But that being said, it's still not the norm. Like, it's a huge generalization to say that every single person acts or is motivated in such a way. It just leads to this, like, fucking defeatist attitude. It's not good for anyone. It's a horrible thing to accuse women of doing, and it's a terrible thing to teach men as well. The main reason for that is because it's just completely incorrect.
It's much better to be truthful and honest like she is than do what these other women are doing, which is pretend they love me to get some money and then cry when they don't get it. That's the true destructive society. The truly destructive female is not Bonnie Blue. It's the woman who cries because she doesn't get the money she wants. It's the woman who takes a man to divorce court and liquidates his empire because she's unhappy that he had a fling on a fucking holiday trip with his boys. Those are the toxic, destructive women. It's the women who belittle the man who goes to work every day to pay the rent, to pay for the house, and won't suck his dick, like Bonnie describes. When you want to have a man go out and work all day every day and give up his life, getting up early in the morning to carry bins around so that you can eat food, and when he comes home, you have no admiration or respect for him. That's destructive.
Just have a fucking day off, lad. Like, fucking shut up. Look, being a bloke comes with issues. Being a woman comes with issues. We all have our own problems to deal with here. Like, just to sit there and act as though you're this fucking oppressed gender that's just not given any sympathy and bring up all of these scenarios that don't happen to the majority of men, as though a woman can't sit there and bring up equally as horrible scenarios that probably happen to a lot more women. It's like, newsflash, life is fucking hard and a good partner is difficult to find, so you should be a little bit more careful. I don't know if you're expecting relationships to just be this peachy, rosy, perfect fucking thing, but they require a lot of work. Like, a lot. Being in a relationship is not easy by any means, as much as movies or, like, media make out to be as such. It requires a lot of careful planning, consideration to maintain the romance in said relationship, especially if you want it to be long-term. You can't just dilly-dally along and do whatever the fuck and not put that effort in and then complain when it isn't going well. If you're not ready to put in the effort required to be in a relationship, then don't get into a fucking relationship. It's not hard. But anyway, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about this podcast. It's 2.5 hours long. We're not going through the entire fucking thing because I do not want to sit through these three idiots having a chat about some bollocks for 3 fucking hours. I've got better things to do. And you have better things to do than watch me talk about this for 2.5 hours. So we'll end it here, I think. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you all in the next one. Actually, no, wait, before that, I need to say something because my family has been on me for the last few weeks. My cousin Maya has friends in school who don't believe that she's cousins with the great Dankyjabo. So here's a picture of us, just me and my cousin Maya. To Maya's friends, I bet you feel dead silly now. Ha ha ha! Yeah, we're cousins. She wasn't lying to you, so deal with it. Bye!